Did you have a normal childhood? Well, my parents made us train for the apocalypse because they said unprepared children were as good as dead. By the time I turned 16, the training was so extreme that one of us almost didn't survive it. My parents moved us to the middle of nowhere when I was 8, saying society was about to collapse and only the strong would survive. They homeschooled us with half regular subjects and half survival skills, and Dad quit his job to focus on family security full-time. At first, the training seemed almost fun, like extreme camping. We learned to build fires without matches, find water in the forest, identify edible plants. But then they started waking us up at random times for surprise drills. 3 in the morning, and suddenly the house would be full of smoke bombs while they screamed that we had 2 minutes to grab our bags and meet at the rally point. If you were too slow or forgot something important, you had to sleep outside without a tent as punishment. By the time I was 12, the training was way more intense. We had to run 5 miles every morning carrying 20-pound packs, even my 8-year-old sister Luna. If someone threw up or collapsed, we all had to start over. Dad would chase us through the woods playing the role of hostile survivors, and if he caught you, you had to do hundreds of push-ups until your arms gave out. Mom taught us hand-to-hand combat, but she didn't pull her punches with kids, and I lost a tooth when she demonstrated a defensive move too hard. The food situation was insane too because they said we needed to be ready for starvation conditions. We'd have normal meals for a week, then suddenly nothing but rice and beans for a month to toughen our systems. Sometimes they'd hide all the food and make us forage, competing against each other because only the fastest got to eat. My brother Gabe got so skinny his ribs showed, and Luna started hiding food in her room until Mom found it and made her eat rotten meat as punishment for hoarding. When I was 14, Dad announced that we weren't getting hard enough fast enough. He started something called Hell Week once a month where we had to survive in the woods with nothing but a knife. No shelter, no food, no water unless we found it ourselves. They'd drop us in different spots miles apart so we couldn't help each other. The first time, I drank bad water and got so sick I hallucinated. But when I crawled home, Dad just said disease resistance was crucial for survival. They made us fight each other with padding and headgear at first. But eventually, Dad said real combat didn't come with protection. My older brother Caleb broke my nose during a training bout, and Mom said it herself without painkillers because she said medical supplies wouldn't exist after society collapsed. When Luna cried about having to fight her siblings, they made her stand guard duty all night in freezing rain because emotional weakness would get the whole family killed in the new world. The weapons training started with paintball guns that left welts the size of tennis balls. Then Dad decided paint wasn't realistic enough, and switched to rubber rounds that could break skin. He built an obstacle course with barbed wire you had to crawl under while he shot at you, saying real enemies wouldn't aim high. Caleb's back looked like hamburger meat from getting caught on the wire while trying to move fast enough to avoid getting hit. The summer I turned 16, they announced the final test. Each of us would be hunted through the woods for 24 hours by Dad and his survivalist buddies. If we got caught, we failed the family and would be sent to live with weak relatives in the city. But first, they said, we had to prove we could handle interrogation. They tied Caleb to a chair and Dad's friend put a cloth over his face, pouring water over it while demanding he give up our safe house location. Caleb passed out twice before they stopped. When it was Luna's turn, something in me snapped. She was only 12 and already had scars covering her body from years of this insane training. I couldn't watch them torture her too. I told them I'd take her place, do her interrogation, and her hunt. Dad laughed and said that kind of weakness would get us all killed, that Luna needed to learn just like everyone else. That night, they separated us into different rooms to prepare for tomorrow's hunt. I could hear Luna crying through the walls and Gabe throwing up from fear. They'd turned us into child soldiers for a war that wasn't even happening, breaking our bodies and minds for their paranoid fantasy. I tried to get to Luna, but my door was locked from the outside. In the morning, they lined us up and handed us each a single water bottle and compass. Dad's friends were already in the woods, armed with rubber rounds and worse. He explained the rules one more time. Survive 24 hours without getting caught or become dead to the family forever. As they pointed us toward the tree line, I saw one of the men loading what looked like real ammunition, not the rubber kind. Dad saw me notice and smiled. Time to find out if all that training paid off, he said, checking his watch. You have a 5-minute head start. Run. I run. My legs pump hard toward the tree line and my heart slams against my ribs so loud I can barely hear anything else. The timer beeps behind me and I know those 5 minutes just started ticking down, but I'm not running away from them like they expect. I'm already mapping the terrain in my head and calculating where Luna would go based on her size and the routes Dad drilled into us. She'd pick the thicker brush to the north where her small body could slip through easier. I angle east first to throw them off and then I'll circle back. My lungs burn, but I push harder because Luna needs me and I won't let them hurt her. The promise forms in my mind without words, just a solid knowing that I'll do whatever it takes to keep my little sister alive. This stopped being about their insane tests the second I saw real bullets. This is about survival now. Real survival, not their twisted version of it. I hit the drainage ditch Dad taught us about during one of his endless terrain lessons and drop into it. The bottom is muddy and gross, but it hides my tracks perfectly. I move through the ditch heading east and my boots squelch in the muck, but I'm below the sight line now. My right leg aches from an old injury, some training exercise that went too far last year. But I ignore the pain and keep moving. I count my supplies in my head while I move. 1 water bottle clipped to my belt, compass in my pocket, knife strapped to my ankle, and 8 years of survival skills they beat into us that I'm now using against them. The irony hits me hard. They trained us to survive their apocalypse, and now I'm using everything they taught me to survive them. I reach a spot where the ditch curves and I peek over the edge. My stomach drops straight through the ground. About 50 yards away, one of Dad's friends stands next to a tree checking his rifle. I freeze completely and barely breathe. The ammunition he's loading into that gun is definitely not rubber. The rounds are brass-colored and real and designed to kill. My hands start shaking because this means they're actually planning to shoot at us with live bullets. Not training rounds that hurt. Not rubber that bruises. Real ammunition that could put holes through our bodies. The training was brutal, but this crosses into something worse. Something that could actually end us. I duck back down in the ditch and my mind races. They're hunting their own kids with real guns. I press my back against the muddy wall and try to think. I know this terrain better than I know anything else because Dad made us memorize every hill and valley and dead space. Dead ground is what he called the low spots, where you can't be seen from higher positions. I use that knowledge now and stay low while I move. The fear should paralyze me, but instead it sharpens everything. Every sound gets louder. Every shadow gets clearer. I can feel my heartbeat in my throat, but my hands steady as I plan my next move. I scramble out of the ditch when I reach thick cover and grab a plastic bag that's caught in some bushes. Someone's old trash becomes my tool. I fill it with rocks and tie it shut with a vine. Then I hang it from a low branch about 20 feet off my actual path and rig it so the wind will make the rocks rattle against each other. The noise will draw attention away from where I'm really going. I grab a dead branch and drag it behind me as I walk backwards, creating footprints that lead toward my fake noisemaker. Dad taught us misdirection during one of his paranoid lessons about enemy tracking. He never thought we'd use it against him. I drop the branch and move silently in the opposite direction, stepping on rocks and roots to avoid leaving prints. My path takes me north now, looping back toward where Luna probably went. The gunshot cracks through the air so loud it feels like it splits the world open. Bark explodes off a pine tree 6 feet to my left, and I feel the splinters hit my arm like tiny knives. I drop flat on my face in the dirt and my whole body goes cold. That was real. That was an actual bullet. They're really shooting at us. The sound confirms everything I saw with that rifle. This isn't training anymore. This is attempted murder dressed up as a final test. I touch my arm, and my fingers come away bloody from where the wood splinters dug in. The pain is sharp but manageable. I stay flat for 30 seconds and listen. No footsteps coming closer. Whoever shot missed me and probably thinks they scared me into running. Instead, I crawl on my belly through the underbrush and head deeper into the trees. I'm moving too fast and not paying enough attention when I hit the old obstacle course area. My right calf catches on something and pain rips through my leg so bad I almost scream. Rusted barbed wire that Dad strung up years ago for crawling drills tears through my jeans and into my skin. The gash is deep and immediate. Blood soaks my pant leg warm and wet. I bite down hard on my own hand to keep from making noise. The taste of my skin and the pain in my hand distracts from my leg for just a second. I can't cry out. Can't give away my position. I reach down and feel the wire still caught in my calf. I have to pull my leg free and the barbs drag through muscle as they come out. Tears run down my face, but I don't make a sound. I wrap my hand around the wound and apply pressure like Mom taught us. The bleeding slows a little but doesn't stop. I rip a strip off my shirt and tie it tight around my calf. It'll have to be good enough. I remember something Dad made us memorize 2 years ago during one of his endless cash drills. There's a supply stash hidden under a rotted log about 100 yards from here. I limp toward it and find the log right where it should be. I roll it over carefully, and there's the old ammunition box Dad used for storage. Inside is an old family radio, the kind we used for communication drills. The batteries might be dead, but I take it anyway and shove it in my waistband. I roll the log back and scatter leaves over the disturbed ground. If I can get this radio working, maybe I can hear their communications. Maybe I can warn my siblings. Maybe it'll save our lives. I don't know yet, but having it feels like having a weapon. I move away from the cache and head north again, limping now, bleeding, but still moving toward where Luna needs me. I pull the radio from my waistband and turn the dial with shaking fingers until I find their frequency. The volume is barely a whisper, but I can still hear Dad's voice cutting through the static. He's talking to one of his friends and the words make my stomach twist. Teach them a lesson they won't forget, he says, and there's something in his tone that sounds almost excited. They need to understand what real survival means. The other man laughs and says something I can't quite catch, but Dad responds with, exactly, no more coddling. I press the radio against my ear and realize with cold certainty that this stopped being training the moment they loaded those rifles. They actually want to hurt us. They want us scared and bleeding and broken so we'll never question them again. I turn the volume down even more and clip the radio to my belt where I can monitor it without giving away my position. For just a second, I think about walking back to the tree line and surrendering. I could take whatever punishment they'd give me. Maybe they'd go easier on the others if one of us gave up right away. I picture myself stepping out with my hands raised, telling Dad I failed his test. accepting whatever comes next. But then I see Luna's face from this morning in my mind, the way her whole body was shaking when they tied Caleb to that chair, the scars covering her legs from years of their training. She's only 12 and she shouldn't have to be out here running from grown men with guns. I can't give up when she needs me. I won't. I push the thought of surrender down deep and keep moving through the trees. I'm cutting through a thick section of pine when I spot something that makes me freeze. There's a small black box mounted on a tree trunk about 8 feet up, one of the family's trail cameras. Dad installed dozens of them around the property years ago to monitor wildlife and track our movements during training exercises. This one is still blinking its little red light, which means it's recording. My hands start shaking as I realize what this means. Every person who walked past this camera in the last few hours got filmed. The hunters with their rifles, Dad giving orders, maybe even footage of them actually shooting at us. This could be proof. Real proof of what they're doing that no one could deny or explain away. I look around to make sure no one's watching, and then I start climbing. The bark is rough under my palms and my injured leg screams with every movement, but I keep going. When I reach the camera, I pop open the back panel the way Dad showed us during a maintenance lesson last year. The SD card slides out easily, and I hold it in my palm for a second. This tiny piece of plastic that might save our lives. I tuck it into my sports bra and snap the elastic tight. Even if they catch me and search my pockets, they won't find it there. Whatever happens now, there's evidence. Men hunting children with rifles, all recorded in perfect digital clarity. I climb back down and head northeast, moving fast despite the pain in my leg. I know Luna's patterns from years of training together. She always chooses dense cover over open ground. She moves slow and careful instead of fast and loud. If she's following her instincts, she'll pass through the area near the old creek bed where the brush grows thick enough to hide in. I find a spot where 3 large rocks form a natural shelter, and I cache half my remaining water there. I use a piece of chalk from my pocket to mark the largest rock with 3 dots arranged in a triangle. It's our secret sister code, something we made up when we were little and kept hidden from everyone else. 3 dots means safe, or from me, depending on context. Luna will know I left this for her. She'll know I'm trying to help even if I can't reach her directly. I cover the water bottle with leaves and moss so it's hidden but findable, then move on before anyone can spot me lingering. 20 yards later, I stop at a birch tree with smooth white bark. I pull out my knife and carve a small arrow pointing northeast toward the logging road. Below the arrow, I add our family code. 3 short lines that mean safe path. Dad created dozens of these codes for navigation and communication during training. He never thought we'd use them to escape from him. If any of my siblings find this mark, they'll understand. They'll know which direction leads away from danger. My hand is cramping by the time I finish, and I have to shake it out to get feeling back. The carved arrow looks obvious to me, but I'm hoping the hunters won't notice it, or won't understand what it means if they do. I hear heavy footsteps crashing through the brush behind me. Someone's coming fast and not bothering to be quiet about it. I drop into a crouch and grab a rock the size of my fist. My heart is pounding, so hard I can feel it in my throat. The footsteps get closer, and I can hear the person breathing hard from running. I wait until they're maybe 30 feet away, and then I throw the rock as hard as I can into the brush off to my left. It hits something solid with a loud crack, and the hunter immediately changes direction, crashing toward the noise like I knew he would. I slip away to the right while he's distracted, moving fast on the balls of my feet the way Mom taught us. The misdirection buys me maybe 2 minutes before he figures out the trick, but 2 minutes is enough to put distance between us. Through a gap in the trees, I catch a glimpse of movement, and my breath catches. It's Gabe. He's maybe 40 yards away, moving with a bad limp that means he's hurt. His shirt is torn, and I can see blood on his arm even from this distance. Every instinct screams at me to go to him, to help him, but I can't. If I call out, the hunters will hear. If I run to him, I'll give away both our positions. The best thing I can do for him is leave a warning he'll recognize. I break 3 leaves off a low branch and arrange them in a specific pattern on the ground, points all facing down. It's another one of Dad's codes, this one meaning danger close, stay hidden. Gabe will see it and understand. I watch him disappear into the trees and force myself to keep moving in the opposite direction. Cold rain starts falling, and within minutes I'm soaked through. My teeth start chattering, and I can feel my core temperature dropping. Hypothermia is a real danger now, maybe more dangerous than the hunters. I know I need heat, but building a fire is risky. The smoke will give away my location to anyone within a half mile, but if I don't warm up soon, I won't be able to move well enough to evade them anyway. I find a rock overhang that provides some shelter from the rain and gather dry tinder from underneath where it's protected. Mom taught us this method years ago, building a tiny fire that produces more heat than smoke. I arrange the tinder carefully under the overhang and use my knife to strike sparks off a piece of flint from my pocket. It takes 6 tries, but finally the tinder catches. I feed it carefully with small dry twigs, keeping the flame small and hot. The warmth feels incredible against my frozen hands. I know I can only risk this for a few minutes before the smoke becomes too dangerous, but those few minutes might be the difference between keeping my ability to think clearly and losing it to the cold. I'm about to put out the fire when I hear someone moving nearby. Really nearby. Close enough that I can smell his sweat mixing with the rain. My whole body goes rigid. One of the hunters steps into view maybe 10 feet away and his eyes lock on me. For a split second, we both freeze. Then he lunges forward and grabs my jacket with both hands. The training kicks in automatically. The wrist break escape Dad drilled into us hundreds of times until it became muscle memory. I twist my body hard to the right while bringing my arm up and over his grip, breaking his hold. But he doesn't let go fast enough and I hear something crack in his hand. He screams in pain and stumbles backward. I stare at him for a second, horrified. I actually hurt someone. I broke something in his hand. The sound of it cracking replays in my head and I feel sick. He was trying to catch me, but I never wanted to actually hurt anyone. The man is cradling his hand against his chest and cursing, his face twisted in pain. I should run, but I'm frozen, watching what my training made me capable of doing to another person. Then he reaches for his rifle with his good hand, and survival instinct finally kicks in. I turn and sprint into the trees, leaving him behind with his broken hand and his anger, my stomach still churning with guilt and fear. I duck behind a fallen tree to catch my breath, and that's when I see Dad standing maybe 50 yards away with one of his buddies. They're both laughing, and Dad slaps the other guy on the back while saying something I can't quite hear. The buddy nods and grins, and Dad points toward the east where I know Luna ran. My chest gets tight watching them joke around like this is some fun weekend activity instead of hunting their own kids with real bullets. Dad checks his watch and says something else that makes them both laugh harder. I press my hand against the rough bark of the fallen tree and feel something inside me crack apart. Not break exactly, but shift into a new shape that I know won't ever fit back together the way it was before. These are the people who were supposed to protect us, and instead they turned us into targets for their sick game. I force myself to look away and keep moving because watching them enjoy this will only make me freeze up when I need to run. I push through thick brush until my legs burn and finally stop when I'm sure they can't see me anymore. My calf is still bleeding through the makeshift bandage from the barbed wire, and every step sends sharp pain up my leg. I need to do something about it or I'll leave a blood trail they can follow. I'm searching the area when I spot something metal half buried under leaves and rotted wood. I dig it out and find an old trail crew lockbox that's rusted orange and covered in dirt. The latch is stuck, but I pry it open with my knife, and inside there's a few bandages still in sealed packages and some antiseptic wipes that are dried out but might still work. My hands shake as I unwrap the bandage on my calf and see how deep the cut actually goes. The edges are ragged and dirt is already getting in there. I rip open an antiseptic wipe and press it against the wound and have to bite my lip to keep from making noise because it burns like fire. I clean it as best I can and then wrap it tight with the new bandages, my hands moving steady even though my heart is racing. The bleeding slows down and I can move better without leaving drops behind me. I shove the extra bandages in my pocket and keep going north through the densest part of the forest. Something nags at my memory, and then I remember the prepaid phone I hid 6 months ago, when Mom sent me to town for supplies. She watched me the whole time, but there was one moment in the store when she was arguing with the clerk about prices, and I grabbed a cheap phone and stuffed it in my jacket. I paid for it with money I'd been saving from odd jobs and hid it on the way home. My heart starts pounding as I try to remember exactly where I put it. There was a hollow tree near the old deer trail, maybe a mile from here. I change direction and start moving faster, even though my leg screams in protest. It takes 20 minutes of searching before I find the right tree with the hollow at chest height. I reach inside and my fingers close around the phone wrapped in a plastic bag. I pull it out and power it on and watch the screen light up. One flickering bar of signal appears in the corner and I almost cry with relief. My hands are shaking, so hard I can barely hold the phone steady. I dial 911 and wait while it tries to connect. The call goes through and I hear a woman's voice say something, but the connection is terrible and cutting in and out. I try to talk fast and tell her kids are being hunted with live ammunition, but the call drops after maybe 10 seconds. I frantically type out a text message with, "Kids hunted with live ammunition," and add our approximate location based on the landmarks I can see. My finger hovers over send and I hit it and watch the little circle spin while it tries to go through. The signal drops to nothing and I don't know if the message sent or not. I stare at the phone willing the signal to come back, but it stays dead. I don't know if anyone got my message or if help is coming, but it's the only chance we have. I'm about to try calling again when I hear something that makes my blood go cold. Luna is crying somewhere to the east and the sound carries through the trees. Every instinct in my body screams at me to go to her right now. She's only 12 and she's out here alone and scared, and I promised myself I wouldn't let them hurt her. But going to her means abandoning my plan to reach the main road where I might be able to flag down a car or find help. I stand there frozen for maybe 5 seconds weighing my options. Then I hear her cry again, and the decision makes itself. Luna needs me more than I need escape. I shove the phone in my pocket and start running toward her voice. I find her huddled under a deadfall with her knees pulled up to her chest and her whole body shaking. She's soaking wet from the rain and her lips have a blue tint that means she's getting too cold. I drop down next to her and pull her into a quick hug and feel how small she is. I give her my water bottle even though I only have a few sips left and she drinks it all without stopping. I whisper instructions as fast as I can about following the creek bed west until she hits the logging road and then waiting there because help might be coming. I try to sound confident like I know exactly what I'm doing, even though I'm just as scared as she is. She nods and grabs my hand and I squeeze back before letting go. I tell her to move now and stay low, and she crawls out from under the deadfall and disappears into the brush. I wait 30 seconds to make sure she's clear, and then I start moving in the opposite direction. I deliberately break branches at shoulder height and leave deep footprints in every muddy patch I can find. I even drop my compass on the ground where they'll see it if they're tracking me. If they follow this trail, then they're not following Luna, and that's all that matters. I keep making noise and leaving obvious signs for maybe 10 minutes until I'm far enough away from where Luna went. Then I hear a man yelling in pain somewhere behind me, and the sound is raw and shocked. I freeze and listen and realize he's caught in something. My stomach drops as I remember the snare traps I set in this area months ago during one of Dad's training exercises. I was supposed to check them and take them down, but I forgot, and now someone's caught in one. The guilt hits me hard because I never meant to actually hurt anyone. I just wanted to slow them down or make them think twice about coming after us. But now someone is in real pain because of something I did, and I feel sick about it. I force myself to keep moving because I can't help him without getting caught myself. His yelling gets quieter as I put distance between us, but I can still hear it echoing in my head. I'm moving through a drainage ditch when I spot a culvert running under what used to be a logging road. I crawl inside and press myself against the concrete and try to control my breathing. That's when I hear the radio chatter above me. Two men are standing right on top of the culvert, and their voices carry down through the metal grate. They're coordinating search patterns and calling out time checks, and one of them says they need to sweep the eastern section again. I memorize every detail I can about their positions and timing, because it might matter later if we survive this. They mention checking the creek bed, and my heart stops because that's where I sent Luna. I grip the phone in my pocket and silently beg them to go a different direction. After what feels like forever, they move on, and I wait another 5 minutes before crawling out. The phone battery icon is flashing red, and I know it's almost dead. I power it down completely to preserve whatever charge is left, because those 911 text logs are the only proof of what's happening out here. If anyone ever needs evidence of what our parents did to us, then that phone has it saved. The evidence matters even if I don't make it out of these woods alive. I crawl out of the culvert, and the rain hits my face hard enough to sting. Through the gray sheets of water, I can barely make out the old logging road about 200 yards away. A truck moves slowly along it, and the sight makes my chest tight because this might be our only chance. I push up from the mud and start running toward the road with no cover and no plan except getting help right now. My legs burn, and the gash on my calf tears open wider with each step, but I keep going. The truck is getting farther away, and I wave my arms over my head and scream, even though the rain probably swallows the sound. The brake lights flash red, and the truck slows down, and I run even harder. I reach the edge of the road just as the driver rolls down his window, and his eyes go wide when he sees me. I know I look bad with mud covering my clothes and blood running down my leg, and my hair plastered to my face. He opens his mouth to say something, but I cut him off and point back at the woods. I tell him men are hunting kids with guns in those woods, and my voice comes out shaky but clear. His face changes from confused to angry in about 2 seconds, and he pulls out his phone. He tells me to get in the truck, but I shake my head because I need to do something first. He's already dialing 911 and talking fast while I back away from the truck. I hear him say something about armed men and children in danger, and the words make it feel more real. I run back toward the culvert area because the phone and SD card are still there, and I need to hide them better. My hands shake as I dig under the concrete edge and find the phone where I left it. I look around for a rock formation that I'll remember and spot 3 boulders stacked in a weird way about 30 feet from the culvert. I shove the phone and SD card deep into a crack between the bottom 2 rocks and cover it with smaller stones and dead leaves. If they catch me now, at least the evidence stays safe and someone will find it eventually. I turn to head back to the truck and almost trip over Gabe crouched in the brush. His face is pale and his hands are shaking, and there's a cut above his eye that's still bleeding. I grab his arm and tell him to come with me right now because help is coming and we can get out of here. He pulls away and shakes his head hard. He says he can't fail the family by giving up, and the words sound like they came straight from Dad's mouth. I want to scream at him that this isn't about passing some test, but I keep my voice low. I tell him the family already failed us by doing this, and going to live with relatives isn't failure. I tell him it's escape from people who hurt us on purpose. His eyes flicker with something that might be doubt, but he still won't move. I can see him fighting with himself, and I wish I had more time to convince him. Voices drift through the trees, and they're getting closer fast. I make a choice in about half a second and shove Gabe hard toward the road. He stumbles forward and catches himself, and I pray he keeps going that direction. I run the opposite way and make as much noise as I can so they follow me instead of him. Branches slap my face and thorns tear at my arms, but I push through. A gunshot cracks behind me, and I hear the bullet hit rock somewhere to my left. Stone chips spray against my back and sting through my wet shirt. My lungs feel like they're on fire, but I keep running because stopping means getting caught or shot. I use every trick Dad taught us about moving through terrain and cut through a section I know has thick brush that slows people down. I can hear someone crashing through behind me, but they're not as fast because they don't know this area like I do. I circle back using a dry creek bed that's hidden by overhanging trees. My breath comes in hard gasps and my leg is screaming, but I force myself to keep moving. Through a gap in the trees, I see Dad and my whole body goes cold. He's got Luna by the arm and his fingers are digging in hard enough that I can see white marks on her skin. She's trying to sit down and he yanks her up rough. His face is red and angry and he's saying something I can't hear from this distance. Luna's leg gives out and she starts to drop again. Dad pulls his hand back and hits her leg hard with his open palm. The sound carries across the space between us and Luna cries out. Something hot and sharp fills my chest, and it's different from any feeling I've had before. I stay hidden in the brush and force myself to watch instead of running out there. I look at the sun position through the rain clouds and figure it's around 2 in the afternoon. I memorize the exact spot where they're standing near 3 pine trees that form a triangle. I listen to every word Dad says about her being weak and useless, and how she's going to get the whole family killed. I watch him strike her leg again when she can't stand up fast enough. My hands curl into fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. I'm making a record in my head of every single detail because someone is going to listen to us eventually, and when they do, I'll remember all of this. The sound starts far away but gets louder fast. That rising and falling wail of sirens cutting through the rain and trees. Dad's head snaps up and I see his whole face change from angry to something else. Something closer to afraid. The men with rifles freeze where they're standing and one of them starts talking fast into a radio. Dad yanks Luna to her feet and barks orders at his buddies to scatter. To get out of here now, and suddenly the hunters who were chasing us are running away through the woods. I stay hidden and watch them crash through brush in different directions, leaving gear behind in their rush to disappear. Dad drags Luna a few steps, then lets go of her arm and takes off running himself, abandoning her in the middle of the clearing. Luna drops to the ground and curls into a ball and I want to run to her, but the sirens are so close now that I need to wait for the right moment. Through the trees, I see the flash of red and blue lights on the old logging road. Car doors slam and I hear voices calling out official words about sheriff's department and showing yourself. My whole body is shaking as I step out of the brush with both hands raised as high as I can get them. A deputy in a tan uniform spots me immediately, and his hand goes to his gun, but he doesn't draw it. I keep my hands up and try to make my voice work, but it comes out as a croak at first. The deputy moves closer and tells me to stay where I am, that I'm okay, and I nod because I can't find words yet. My legs feel like they might give out, but I force myself to stay standing because I need to tell them everything right now before anyone gets away. Another deputy comes up beside the first one, and this one has a name tag that says Brooks. He's older with gray in his hair, and when he looks at me, his expression goes from alert to concerned. He asks if I'm hurt, and I shake my head even though that's not exactly true. Then the words start pouring out of me so fast I almost trip over them. I tell him my sister Luna is right there in that clearing about 30 yards east, and she can't walk well because Dad hit her leg. I tell him my brother Gabe ran toward the road earlier and might be hiding near the culvert. I tell him my oldest brother Caleb is still out here somewhere, and I haven't seen him since the hunt started. I tell him the men have live ammunition, not rubber rounds, and they were actually shooting at us with real bullets. Deputy Brooks' face goes hard and angry when I say that last part, and he radios for more units immediately, speaking in codes I don't fully understand, but I catch the words armed subjects and endangered minors. He tells me I'm safe now and nothing bad is going to happen to me anymore. The words don't feel real yet, because safe isn't something I know how to recognize after 8 years of training that taught me nowhere is ever truly safe. More deputies arrive within minutes and they spread out to secure the area, calling out to each other as they move through the woods in pairs. I see one of them find Luna and kneel down beside her and she flinches away from him at first, before he talks to her in a calm voice. Through the trees I spot Dad trying to run and 2 deputies chase after him. He's fast because he trained himself as hard as he trained us, but the deputies are faster and they tackle him hard into the mud. Part of me feels sick watching my own father get forced to the ground with his hands pulled behind his back. Part of me feels relief so strong it makes my knees weak. Relief that he can't hurt us anymore, that someone finally stopped him. They put handcuffs on him and pull him to his feet and he's yelling something about his rights and illegal search. One of the deputies is leading Luna toward an ambulance that just arrived and she's limping badly, leaning on him for support. Deputy Brooks asks if I can walk and I nod. Then he tells me I need to show him where I hid the evidence I mentioned. We move through the woods toward the culvert and my legs are shaking so bad I almost fall twice, but I keep going. I find the rock formation exactly where I left it and dig underneath until my fingers close around the phone and the SD card. My hands are trembling as I hand them over to Brooks, and he looks at both items carefully, turning them over like they're precious. He pulls out his own phone and uses an adapter to view the trail camera footage right there in the woods. I watch his face as he scrolls through the clips, and his expression goes darker with each one, his jaw getting tighter and tighter. He asks me if I know all the men in these videos, and I tell him yes. They're all Dad's survivalist friends who came to hunt us. He nods and makes a call to someone, speaking in that official tone that means serious business is happening. The ambulance ride to the county hospital feels unreal, like I'm watching it happen to someone else instead of living it myself. They wrap me in a blanket even though I'm not that cold anymore, and a paramedic checks my pulse and blood pressure while asking gentle questions. At the hospital, they take me to a room with clean white walls and bright lights that hurt my eyes after hours in the dark woods. A nurse comes in and introduces herself as Valerie, and she has kind eyes, but her face gets tighter and tighter as she examines me. She documents every injury with a camera, taking pictures of the gash on my leg from the barbed wire, the bruises on my arms from being grabbed, the old scars covering my back and shoulders from years of training. She asks about each mark, and I tell her the truth about obstacle courses and punishment drills, and fighting practice without protection. She writes everything down in careful detail, and then she tells me gently that she's required by law to report what she's seeing. I nod and tell her I want her to report it, that I want everyone to know what they did to us. She squeezes my hand for just a second before going back to her documentation, and something about that small gesture makes my throat tight. After Valerie finishes, a woman in regular clothes comes in and sits down across from me in a quiet room away from the main emergency area. She introduces herself as Kendra and says she's a CPS worker assigned to our case. She has a calm, direct way of talking that reminds me of the way Dad used to give mission briefings, except her words are about safety instead of survival scenarios. She explains what happens next with words like safety plans and temporary placement and investigation procedures. I don't trust easily after years of Dad teaching us that government workers were enemies who would destroy families, but something about Kendra's straightforward manner makes me want to believe her. She doesn't make big promises or talk about how everything will be perfect now. She just lays out the steps and the timeline and asks what questions I have. I ask if we'll stay together, and she says they'll try to keep siblings placed together when possible. I ask if we have to see our parents, and she says not unless we choose to during supervised visits. I ask what happens if Dad gets out of jail, and she says there will be protective orders in place and he won't be allowed near us. They bring Gabe and Luna into the hospital about 20 minutes later, and I see them through the doorway before they see me. Luna's legs are covered in bruises that look purple and black under the fluorescent lights. Gabe has cuts on his arms that they're cleaning and bandaging, and his face is pale and drawn. When they finally bring them into my room, we just grab onto each other and hold tight without saying anything. Words can't cover what we've been through together, what we survived today, what we lived through for 8 years before today. Luna is crying against my shoulder and Gabe's whole body is shaking, and I'm probably shaking too, but I don't let go of either of them. We stay like that until a nurse gently tells us they need to finish examinations and we'll have time together again soon. In a nearby room, I hear Mom's voice talking to the police, and at first I think I'm imagining it because the words sound so disconnected from reality. She's telling them that everything they did was out of love, that they were preparing us to survive the collapse of society, that we would thank them someday when we were the only ones left alive. The words sound completely insane now that I'm hearing them in a normal hospital surrounded by normal people whose faces show horror instead of agreement. One of the officers responds in a flat voice that hunting children with firearms isn't preparation, it's child endangerment, and Mom's voice rises as she insists they don't understand the greater threat. I turn away from the door because I can't listen anymore, can't process how she genuinely believes the things she's saying. A woman in a business suit comes in later and introduces herself as Kenley Savage, an assistant district attorney. She sits down and explains the potential charges they're considering against our parents, using terms like child endangerment and assault and reckless endangerment with a firearm. She's honest that prosecution isn't guaranteed, that they need to build a strong case and gather all the evidence. But she says what happened today combined with the trail camera footage and our statements gives them solid ground to work with. I appreciate that she doesn't make promises she can't keep, doesn't tell me everything will definitely work out a certain way. She just lays out the possibilities and the process, and tells me that my voice matters in all of this, that what I saw and experienced is important evidence. She leaves me her card and says I can call if I think of anything else, or if I have questions as things move forward. The hospital wants to keep us overnight for observation, and they set up rooms where the three of us can stay close together. Luna won't let go of my hand even when the nurses need to check her vitals, and I don't make her let go because I understand needing that anchor. Gabe sits on the edge of his bed staring at nothing, and I recognize that look, that processing shock that comes after adrenaline fades. Someone brings us food from the cafeteria, and it's just regular hospital food, nothing special, but we eat it slowly like we're afraid it might disappear. For the first time in 8 years, no one is timing how fast we eat or making us compete for portions, or punishing us for taking too much. The simple act of eating without fear feels strange and overwhelming, and I have to put my fork down twice to steady my breathing. That same night, Kendra takes us to a courthouse where a judge is waiting even though it's almost 10 o'clock. The judge is an older woman with gray hair, and she looks at the three of us sitting in a row and asks if we understand what's happening. I nod and explain that we need to be placed somewhere safe away from our parents. She reads through Deputy Brooks' report and the medical documentation, and her mouth gets tighter with each page. She asks me directly if I want to go back home, and I say no. So fast the word comes out like a reflex. She asks Luna and Gabe the same question, and they both shake their heads. The judge signs papers right there, and tells us we're now under emergency protective custody of the state. She says our parents can't contact us or come near us and that we'll be placed in a safe location tonight. The relief hits me so hard I can't hold it together anymore. I start crying in a way I couldn't let myself do in the woods. Big, ugly sobs that make my whole body shake. Luna grabs my hand and she's crying too, and even Gabe has tears running down his face. The judge's expression softens and she tells us we're safe now, that we did the right thing by asking for help. Kendra drives us to a temporary shelter on the other side of town, and the building looks normal and quiet. She shows us to a room with 3 beds and clean sheets and tells us we can lock the door from the inside if we want to. The idea of choosing when to lock a door feels strange and important at the same time. She leaves us with some donated clothes and toiletries and says she'll be back in the morning to check on us. Our first night in the shelter feels completely wrong in ways I didn't expect. There's no one yelling at us to wake up for drills. No one timing how fast we move from bed to door. I lie in the dark listening to Luna's breathing and Gabe shifting in his bed, and I can't fall asleep. My body keeps waiting for danger that doesn't come. Every small sound makes me tense up, expecting Dad to burst through the door or an alarm to start blaring. Around 3 in the morning, I finally drift off but wake up an hour later in a panic, thinking I missed a drill and will be punished. It takes me several minutes to remember where I am and why I'm here. Luna wakes up crying twice, and I move to her bed and hold her until she falls back asleep. Gabe never seems to sleep at all, just stares at the ceiling with his eyes reflecting the tiny bit of light from the window. In the morning, Kendra brings us breakfast from a fast food place, and we eat it slowly, still not used to the idea that food just appears without us having to earn it or compete for it. She explains that we'll need to do some follow-up medical exams today to document everything properly for the case. I nod and finish my breakfast, even though my stomach feels tight with anxiety about more doctors and more questions. The doctor's office is in a different building, and they take us one at a time to examine us thoroughly. When it's my turn, the doctor weighs me and measures my height and writes things down with a concerned expression. She says I'm 20 pounds underweight for my age and height, and that my growth has probably been affected by years of poor nutrition. I feel ashamed even though she keeps saying it's not my fault, that what happened to us was abuse and neglect. She examines the scars on my back from the barbed wire and the partially healed cut on my leg from the hunt. She documents every bruise and mark and injury with photographs and detailed notes. She explains that years of starvation training have left physical marks that won't fade quickly, that my body will need time and proper nutrition to recover. When she's done with me, I wait in the hallway while Luna goes in, and I can hear Luna crying through the door when the doctor asks her about certain injuries. Gabe comes out looking pale and won't meet my eyes. The doctor tells Kendra that all 3 of us show signs of long-term malnutrition, and that Luna has some partially healed fractures that were never properly treated. The words make me want to throw up because I knew we were being hurt, but hearing it described in medical terms makes it feel more real somehow. Back at the shelter, Kendra shows me a tablet and pulls up a local news website. There's a story about our case, but it doesn't use our names. Just says that 4 children were rescued from a dangerous situation involving armed adults. The article is short and doesn't have many details, but the comments section below it goes on for pages. Some people are supportive and saying they hope we're okay now. Others are saying we must be lying or making it up for attention, that parents have a right to raise their kids however they want. Someone writes that survival training is actually good parenting, and we're probably just soft kids who couldn't handle discipline. Reading the comments makes my chest feel tight and my face get hot. Kendra sees my expression and gently takes the tablet away. She tells me not to read the comments, that people who don't understand what happened will say all kinds of things that aren't true or fair. I try to follow her advice, but it's hard knowing that strangers are out there saying we're liars when they weren't the ones being hunted with real bullets. She reminds me that what matters is that we're safe now, and that the people who need to believe us do believe us. The next day, they arrange supervised sibling time in a room at the shelter where we can be together without other people around. Luna won't let go of my hand the entire time, gripping it so tight my fingers start to go numb. She keeps asking if we're really safe now, if Dad can find us here, if they're going to make us go back. I tell her yes, we're safe, even though I'm not entirely sure myself, because she needs to hear it from someone she trusts. Gabe sits away from us looking angry and confused, and when I try to talk to him, he just shakes his head. He says he doesn't know what to think anymore. That part of him still believes Dad was trying to help us survive. I want to shake him and make him see how messed up that is, but I know he's been through the same trauma we have, and his brain is trying to make sense of it in whatever way it can. Luna starts crying again and asks if we'll always be together, or if they're going to split us up. I promise her we'll stay together no matter what, even though I have no idea if that's a promise I can actually keep. The 3 of us end up sitting close on the couch, and Luna falls asleep with her head on my shoulder, while Gabe stares at nothing. 2 days later, the shelter staff tells me I have a phone call, and my whole body goes cold when I hear Dad's voice on the line. He's calling from jail, and I can hear the manipulation in his voice immediately. That specific tone he uses when he wants to make you feel guilty. He tells me I'm breaking up the family, that I've betrayed everyone who loves me, that I'll regret this choice for the rest of my life. He says Mom is devastated and Caleb won't even talk about what I've done. His words are designed to make me doubt myself and feel like the bad guy in all of this. For a second, the old training kicks in and I almost apologize, almost say I'll fix it somehow. But then I remember the safety plan Kendra taught me for exactly this situation. I tell him I have to go and I hang up the phone before he can say anything else. My hands are shaking, so bad I can barely put the phone back on the receiver. I sit down on the floor and pull my knees to my chest and just shake for what feels like 20 minutes. One of the shelter workers finds me there and sits with me until I can breathe normally again. She doesn't ask what happened, just stays nearby until the shaking stops. A week after we arrived at the shelter, people from the school district come to meet with us about enrollment. Kendra is there too, and she explained earlier that we'll need to start attending regular school since we can't be homeschooled anymore. The school people are surprisingly gentle about the whole thing, saying they understand we've never been in a normal classroom before. One woman who introduces herself as the district coordinator suggests starting slow with just a few hours a day, gradually building up to a full schedule as we get more comfortable. She explains that they have counselors and support staff who work with kids in difficult situations. I agree to try it because I don't really have a choice. But the idea of a full school day surrounded by normal kids who've had normal lives makes me want to throw up. Luna looks scared but nods when they ask if she's willing to try. Gabe says he'll go, but his voice is flat and empty. They give us schedules and supply lists and information about the school bus route. Looking at the papers makes it all feel too real, like we're actually supposed to just join normal society after everything that happened. My first day at the public school is worse than I imagined. The building is huge and crowded and loud in ways that make my skin crawl. Kids are everywhere, talking and laughing and shoving each other in ways that seem friendly but make me flinch. I'm supposed to go to something called homeroom, but I get lost trying to find the right classroom. The hallway gets more crowded as the bell gets closer, and suddenly I can't breathe right. My vision starts to narrow and my heart is pounding so hard it hurts. I end up crouched against a wall with my hands over my ears trying to make everything stop. The school counselor finds me there and she doesn't touch me or crowd me, just sits down nearby and starts talking in a calm voice. She coaches me through a grounding technique, asking me to name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear. I use the breathing exercises she teaches me and actually manage to calm down after a few minutes. It feels like a small victory that I didn't completely fall apart, that I used a technique and it worked. She walks me to my first class and tells the teacher I had a rough start, but I'm okay now. The other kids stare at me when I walk in late, but I keep my head down and find an empty seat. 3 weeks later, there's a preliminary court hearing where I have to testify about what happened during the hunt. Kendra prepared me for this, but actually sitting in the courtroom with Dad and Mom on the other side is harder than I expected. The prosecutor asks me questions about the training and the hunt and the guns, and I answer as honestly as I can. My voice shakes, but I keep going, forcing the words out even when they feel stuck in my throat. I look at the judge instead of at Dad because if I look at him, I'll lose my nerve completely. I tell the truth about the guns and the fear and the years of training that got more and more extreme. I describe the waterboarding and the starvation and the injuries that never got proper medical care. Dad's lawyer tries to make it sound like everything was normal parenting and survival education, but I don't let him twist my words. I say clearly that we were being hunted with live ammunition by grown men, and that I thought we were going to die. When I'm done testifying, my legs feel like they might give out, but I make it back to my seat next to Kendra. The judge listens to all the testimony and looks at the evidence, including the trail camera footage and the medical reports. She grants an extended protective order that will last for months while the criminal case moves forward. She sets a timeline for further proceedings and orders our parents to undergo psychological evaluations before any decisions are made about their parental rights. She also orders that we continue to have no contact with them, except through supervised visits if we choose to have them, which none of us want right now. It's not over, but it's progress. Real progress that means we're staying safe and away from them. I'll take any progress I can get at this point. Kendra drives us back to the shelter and tells us we did well today, that speaking up was brave and important. I don't feel brave, just exhausted and shaky, but I managed to get through it without falling apart. That night, Luna sleeps in my bed again, and I lie awake thinking about how many more court dates and evaluations and decisions are still ahead of us. The process is long and complicated and scary, but at least we're not in the woods being hunted anymore. At least we're not alone. A few days later, Kendra calls us into her office to talk about placement options, and she has a list of relatives in the city who might take us. She goes through each name and explains who they are and what their living situations look like. But before she gets halfway through the list, Luna grabs my hand, and Gabe moves his chair closer to mine. We tell Kendra at the same time that we need to stay together, that splitting us up isn't an option no matter how nice the relatives might be. Kendra nods like she expected this and makes a note on her papers, then says she'll look for a placement that can take all 3 of us, even though it's harder to find. The relief I feel is huge because losing my siblings now after everything we survived together would break me completely. My first real therapy session happens in a small office with soft chairs and a box of tissues on the table. The therapist is a woman with gray hair who doesn't push me to talk, but just waits until I'm ready. I end up telling her that I feel guilty for not protecting Luna and Gabe better during all those years of training, that I should have done more or been smarter or braver. She listens without interrupting and then tells me gently that I was a child too, that I couldn't have stopped what was happening any more than they could. Hearing her say it doesn't make the guilt disappear, but it makes it feel slightly less heavy, like maybe I can carry it without it crushing me. The next week, Luna sits down with Kendra and starts talking about things we didn't mention before in our first interviews. She describes times when Mom locked the food cabinets and made us go hungry for days as punishment for small mistakes. She talks about winter nights when Dad forced us to sleep outside in freezing temperatures without proper gear because we failed some drill. Kendra writes everything down carefully, and her face gets tighter with each new detail Luna shares. Each thing Luna says out loud makes it more real and harder to deny, and I can see it's painful for her to remember, but she keeps going because she knows it matters for the case. Kendra updates all the files and tells Luna she's brave for speaking up, and Luna cries a little but seems lighter afterward, like the secrets were weighing her down. That same week, Gabe starts talking about how maybe our parents weren't completely wrong, how the family unity we had was important even if the training went too far. I get so mad at him that I actually yell, asking how he can defend people who nearly killed us. We argue for almost an hour, with both of us getting louder and more upset until Luna starts crying and begs us to stop. Finally, we calm down enough to really talk instead of just shouting. Gabe admits he's confused and scared about what happens to us now without our parents. We make a pact right there that we'll tell the truth about what happened and stop protecting Mom and Dad, but we'll stay loyal to each other no matter what. We shake hands on it like it's an official agreement, and it feels important, like we're choosing each other over the people who hurt us. A few nights later, we're sitting in our temporary placement eating cheap pizza from a box, and Gabe makes some stupid joke about how the pepperoni looks like the target circles Dad used to make us shoot at. It's not even that funny, but suddenly we're all laughing so hard that soda comes out of Luna's nose, which makes us laugh even harder. The laughter feels normal and light in a way I haven't experienced in years, like we're just regular kids making dumb jokes instead of survivors of something terrible. For those few minutes, I forget about court dates and therapy appointments and just enjoy being silly with my siblings. The next day, an envelope arrives through our parents' attorney, and my therapist suggests I read it with her present in case it's upsetting. I open it and start reading their words about how everything they did was out of love, how society really is dangerous and they were just trying to prepare us. They never actually say sorry for anything specific, just keep explaining and justifying like if they use the right words, we'll understand they were right all along. My therapist asks how I feel about responding, and I think about it for a minute before deciding they don't deserve my energy anymore. Writing back would just give them another chance to manipulate us, and I'm done with that. I fold the letter and put it back in the envelope and tell my therapist I want to focus on moving forward instead of arguing with people who will never admit they were wrong. Deputy Brooks calls a few weeks later and asks if I'm willing to go back to the woods where the hunt happened, so the prosecution can map the scene accurately for trial. I'm scared to go back, but I agree because I want them to have all the evidence they need. Brooks drives me out there with another deputy, and we walk through the forest in daylight with their police radios crackling. I show them where I hid the phone, where I saw the man with live ammunition, where Luna was crying under the deadfall. Walking through it all again with police protection helps me see it differently. Like the place that terrified me is just ordinary forest now without armed men hunting us. My body still remembers the fear and muscle memory, but my brain can process that it's over now, that this is just trees and dirt and rocks. That night, back at the placement, I sit down with a notebook and start drafting a victim impact statement for the court proceedings that are still months away. Finding my own words to describe what happened feels powerful in a way I didn't expect. I'm not just repeating what Kendra or the prosecutor tells me to say, I'm claiming my own story and my own voice. I write about the fear and the pain and the years of training that broke us down. I write about how I still wake up sometimes thinking I hear Dad yelling drill commands. I write about watching Luna get hurt and not being able to stop it. The words come easier than I thought they would, and by the time I finish, my hand is cramping, but I feel stronger. Over the next few weeks, we settle into our new placement house with all three of us together in the same building. We start building routines that feel almost normal, like going to the school and doing homework and having assigned chores that are just regular house stuff, not survival training. My bedroom has a door that locks from the inside, and I can choose when to open it, which feels like the most important kind of safety. Because it's safety, I control myself. Luna decorates her room with posters, and Gabe joins a gaming club at the school. And slowly we're becoming kids again instead of soldiers. The nightmares still come sometimes, and the fear doesn't just disappear, but we're learning what normal life looks like, and it's so different from what we knew before. Well, that's the dramatic finale no one was waiting for. If you're still watching, you've either got great taste or really low standards. Either way, I'm not judging. Go ahead and subscribe. Let's make this mistake together.